With the mission to keep as many men on as many guns for as long as possible, we called him Doc. Welcome to Combat Vet Vision. And now your host, Aaron Chief Seabird.
Hey, welcome to Vet Vision. Hey, this is a place where I really get to give my opinion on a lot of different things. I get to tell my story. I also get to tell a lot of other people's stories, our sponsors, supporters, volunteers, other combat vets that come on the show. I'm really honored today to have Anela Richie on deck. She does a lot. She's been doing a lot. She's an Air Force vet, combat vet. She served in the combat zone, and she is running her own clinical stuff through a Mindful You. And she's going to talk a lot about her help and support for families and our combat vets. So, Anela, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Sorry for the scratchy voice.
Hey, it's totally okay. Hey, go ahead and tell your story. I mean, obviously, you have a lot of connections, and we talk a lot about Warrior Built, the PTSD Foundation on here, but her connections to the Warrior Built goes far. Chris Carlisle, who's a good buddy of mine and served in the Marine Corps, she grew up with him. He passed away on a mission with Warrior Built on the race motorcycle out in like the Mint 400 or Vegas to Reno. I'm sorry,
Vegas to Reno.
But a super awesome guy. You knew him. You grew up with him. And you're connected through a lot of that, as well as just hanging out at Warrior Built and helping out.
Warrior Built.
Exactly. But tell your story. Tell your story about the Air Force and why you joined, stuff like that.
So I am a medically retired Air Force veteran because of multiple issues from deployments and things. But my story for how I ended up where I am now really stems from the fact that when I came back from a deployment in 2010, I was in Afghanistan, and after traveling around and getting on helicopters and going to every remote fob and cop that there was all over the place, I came home with a little bit of PTSD and went to a therapist who had never left the state of Texas and didn't know what it was like or how to empathize with missing births and weddings and funerals and all the things that we're so used to missing as being part of the military. And I decided then in 2010 that I was going to go to school and become a therapist for military and their families so that I could help bridge that gap between the clinical aspect and knowing what it is like. So I've helped a lot of veterans themselves. I have a lot of veteran families where they're like, I just don't understand why they're making this choice. And I can kind of come back and say, well, these are some questions to ask, or these are some resources. So I really put it out there that I will, if I'm not the therapist for them, then I will find them the therapist or find them a resource, find them you guys as an outlet for any kind of energy or things or above and beyond resources than what I can provide.
Yeah, it's amazing because I know, for the longest time you've had a lot of resources for me. I've leaned on you in many cases. I remember you were going through some of your clinical stuff, and you even helped me out with some drug and alcohol rehab centers in the local area. I mean, you're familiar with a lot of the things that are going on in the Lake Elsinore surrounding areas, Temecula, Riverside, San Bernardino, a bunch of these places. So yeah. I know you've been an awesome resource in so many different ways. And you've been there in the background, just like, hey, I can help whenever you need it. Yeah. But you're in the forefront too. Your clinical stuff involves the family too, right? Clinical for family counseling to PTSD counseling to all these kind of cool things, to include an IOP.
Correct.
So talk a little bit about your organization and why it's so important and what it is that's really cool about it.
So I have a Mindful You, and we have an office in Canyon Lake, but obviously because of COVID, it kind of really put a spotlight on our ability to provide telehealth services to everybody in the state of California. I am expanding potentially into other areas, but I haven't gotten that far yet. what we're working on now is starting an IOP, which is an intense outpatient service. And that is simply because the need that I see from the people in my office need more than I can give them 50 minutes at a time. Even if I saw them 7 days a week, there's only so much I can do 50 minutes at a time, right? An IOP allows me to sit with people for 3 to 5 hours up to 4 days a week and really go through that core of what their issue is. So if it's PTSD, okay, well, what symptoms are you feeling? What minor milestones can we get you to so that you can get some sort of success feeling? And that is just, and that's the in-between stage too of a residential facility like you guys do with going to Camp Hope. It would be either a step down or a step up from regular therapy to kind of figure out what the need is of the patient.
Yeah, that's super important. I mean, when you talk about going to Camp Hope, we send our guys to Camp Hope, and these guys are actually living in a facility that is not really designed it wasn't designed originally to have the IOP capabilities, but it does now. It is all set up there. It's got the, I think it's called a V2 or V3 setup. So they're getting the clinical on campus there. Before, they were going to a facility like yours twice or 3 times a week, called the Refuge, which is a great organization. But you got so many guys living on Camp Hope, 100 people, to get them off the Refuge all the time is very, very crazy. So what you're offering now is super important and that's something that the PTSD Foundation wants to bring to all of its locations out and about, these IOPs, because some guys can't leave for that 6 to 9 months to a program. And because you're right there in Canyon Lake, they can actually go to an IOP setup that allows them to still have all these symptoms and all these issues, but they don't have to leave their service dog behind, their family behind. They don't have to do all these different things. So that's the importance of having that. But it's got to be a trusted thing. And why it's so cool with Anela is because she's been in a combat zone. She has this combat aura. She's experienced the
Not everybody
same.
likes that though. It takes a certain breed of person and client, right? And I'm sure that people will read my bio and look at it and be like, oh, yeah, not the one. Because I am a straight shooter. I will tell you, here's what I think that you need to work on. Here's some homework assignments. Here, I would really like to see you in a family session. I would really like to see you, work on this relationship with your kids or work on forgiving yourself for whatever demons that you have. And not everybody's ready to do that. And not everybody's ready to have someone else in their business. They know that they need help. They just don't know how to start it. And if I am very direct to the people in my office, then that is not always something that people like.
Right. And the reason for that, for the most part, is because military members are normally very strong-minded, very focused, and they almost steer. I want to say they probably have the tendency to steer a lot of the treatment through their own eyes, like through their own mindset, how they go in and approach. Maybe some therapists might be a little bit intimidated by that because they're not going to experience this. They're not going to have that same experience that you have. And obviously, me as a corpsman, I'm kind of under the same boat. A lot of guys, when they first came to Wounded Warrior Battalion West, I was blown up. I was saying, I served in the dirt 3 times to Iraq, but a lot of them, they try to treat me like I was a corpsman that just was like a mouthpiece. And I was like, I always had to tell them, hey, I'm a Purple Heart recipient. I've been, 3 times to Iraq. I'm not just a corpsman from the books. I'm a corpsman from the dirt. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you don't get to play that game that you want to play.
Yeah.
Is on a level field here. So they have to change it up. And they're like, oh, okay, now I can't just be like, they can't say you don't know what it's like. And so when you get to say, no, I get to know what it's like because I've been there.
Yeah.
It changes and it's more of a window that says, oh, I got to go through this tunnel. I don't have a big giant scope of a tunnel to go through. It's narrow. It's very narrow. You don't get you get
there's
a
a lot of
focus
fluff that's
attention.
taken out for me seeing military and their families, right? Because I can kind of get to a more direct level versus all of the surface level. Like, okay, well, tell me why you're here. Okay, well, I know why people are here. It's because they're experiencing some sort of distress, whatever that is. But then, okay, I can almost always tie it back to military service and the history and the things that they've gone through. Like, oh, I had a great 20 years, or I had a great 4 years or 2 years, or however long that you were in the military till whatever happened that you weren't in the military anymore. There's always some sort of a building block that is foundationally laid in your, like, you know, if you're thinking of a memory board from a computer, that is a chip that has been laid the second you go to boot camp. and then and then all the things lay on top of it, right? So as you go into your decision-making process for the things, a career that you're going to pick, oh, well, I don't want to be around a super large group of people, so I'm going to take this work from home call center job that's way behind the scenes, doesn't have me interacting with people. Those are those foundations that are set.
Right. And how are you enjoying this? I mean, obviously you went through a lot of studying to make sure that you got to this point.
Yes.
You know, when did you start this? I mean, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago that you started this particular program, and you
I
wanted it to
started
get.
my office in 2019, and coincidentally had gotten paneled with a lot of insurances, particularly TRICARE and the Community Care Network, which is a part of the VA, and in 2020. So as people were experiencing more distress because of COVID, then I was able to kind of hop on and help people with that. But we're always expanding. I'm always looking for ways to help and for ways to, you know, utilize people that are even in Warrior Belt, right? So I'm part of your guys' chat network. And when people post about a job, I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me see if I can find a way to use you. Or here, if you need a resource, like just message me or call me or whatever it is. One of the things that we've been doing that I've been spending a lot more time on is working with people and their disability ratings with the VA and kind of going through all of the symptoms that they have, all of the ratings that they have, their medical and mental health issues, because a lot of times people are physically thinking of the things that are wrong with them, right? Like, oh, my back pain or my ear pain or my foot pain. They're not thinking about the mental health aspect and all of the things that go along with dealing with that physical pain.
Exactly. And that's the important part, because the mindset is such an important, you know, mind, body, and spirit is something that you really want to think about when you're getting this overall kind of treatment for yourself. And you're able to do that. And you know, you brought something up that you know, I got this network of this string of it's the Warrior Group on Messenger. And I put a lot of people in there. I put Anela in there with, you know, we got all kinds of combat vets in there. We got sponsors, supporters, and volunteers. And that thing can sometimes, you know, it's good for information passing. There's a lot of good information that's going on in there, but sometimes guys are calling for help and they start throwing some stuff out there that looks really crazy. And it's important that, you know, and you've jumped in a lot of times to offer that support to some of the guys that maybe get fired up about something and they go down a tangent roll, which is an important thing. And I'm like, hey, that's cool, but you know, let us intervene, let us talk to you, let us reach out to you and grab a hold of that. Thanks for supporting me on that, because I'm not always available, but I'm available a lot. But sometimes we get pulled in so many directions. But you know, thanks a lot for jumping on that. You know, that's just to inform the the public that these resources are really kind of great, and you're a great resource. And you know, the chat is a great resource, and my podcast obviously becomes a great resource to get this information out.
Absolutely.
But it's so cool. It's so cool what you're doing. And, you know, it's just an amazing thing.
Well, it's the whole body concept, right? Like, I will tell people for myself, I know that in the short term, my mind will always win. in the long term, my body is going to like say, nope, not today, right? So if we have this just trug along mindset for our own mental health and our physical health, the body will always tell you, and it might look different. It might be that, you know, your physical pain is more intense than normal, or it might look like retreating from a job or from family and friends, but really kind of knowing where your boundaries are or even how to set them as a military veteran. You know, I have my own thing of PTSD, and one of the things that really is impossible for me to want to deal with is balloons. And it's not the balloon themselves, it is the potential that this giant gathering of balloons is like going to somehow set off and pop, 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 which sounds very much like rapid gunfire. And I know in my mind and looking at my surroundings that, you know, I'm in America and I'm in California and everything is fine, but it still takes that like 3 to 5, maybe even 10 seconds for my body to realize what my brain is trying to say. Like, you're here, you're fine. So it's not always about just saying like, oh, well, I have this disorder or I have this. It's knowing what your triggers are and what you need to do to be mindful of those.
Wow, that's cool that you mentioned that, because I never really thought of the reason why I don't like a lot of balloons being together, but now I do. These are the puzzle pieces that come together even in warrior groups that kind of make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, because I'm like, why am I so like weird about these balloons?
Yeah.
I get all like kind of nervous. But on top of that, if somebody wants to get help and treatment, you know, that's the biggest question. Like, hey, do I have to go to my provider? Do I have to go to the VA and check in with my provider, and then come to you and then ask you to take my case? How does that work? Let's talk about
So
that.
for me particularly, because I am already contracted with TRICARE and the VA, they could just come directly to me and my office, and I will take all their insurance information and validate it. It usually takes 24 to 48 hours for us to get that verification of benefits back. And then we could go ahead and set up an appointment. Being that we have Warrior Built members and other people all over the country / world, right? If you're in the United States and you need help, then you can go to Psychology Today and you can filter by the type of insurance that you have, by the type of specialty that you want them to have, because you don't, therapists are, you know, kind of generalized, and then we do extra training for our passion projects. So I've done a lot of extra training for trauma and PTSD because that's where my heart was of why I wanted to become a therapist in the first place, right? But you might get a therapist that specializes in eating disorders if you aren't sure what you're looking for. So you can kind of narrow it down. I always offer help to people if they don't know where to look. Like, hey, I want to see an in-person person, but I'm in Sacramento or I'm in Texas. Okay, here, what are your issues? And then I'll help you narrow it down to 3 to 4 that you could go and make contact with and try to find yourself. Because just because I'm a therapist in Canyon Lake, 3 miles away from the Warrior Built office, doesn't mean that you sitting in Arizona or Las Vegas or Florida need help there. Right. So I don't ever want anybody to sit and suffer in silence. If you need help finding somebody to talk to, then I will help find you somebody to talk to.
Nice. And do you do these sessions online as well, or you know, let's say they do live in Arizona and they just want they want your service? You know, is that a possibility?
There are different things because of licensing. I am only licensed in the state of California currently. I am expanding my license to Arizona and Nevada, so that I can provide mental health specific billable services to members in those states. In the meantime, I could definitely find a provider in those areas for somebody that would be more corely aligned with what they would need. So anywhere in the state of California, I can help you.
Nice. But she can help you also, no matter where you are in the country, to find somebody in the area that you're actually at. So
correct.
Don't lose sight of the fact that she can help you either way. And then, you know, on top of that, you know, there's just so many other avenues of support that she's going to be able to direct as well.
Yeah. different groups, different things, different, adventures that you could go on. I look at therapy like an adventure, right? Because you don't realize how much of that stuff you kind of block away, especially as a military member, right? You're like, okay, well, adapt and overcome. Okay, this happened. That's great. Let's move on to the next thing. And then you never really go back to deal with it. And then, you end up at a point where you don't even know what it is that you're trying to overcome in the first place.
Right. And the other things too, you're not just involved in that, you're involved with Warrior Built stuff, and the PTSD Foundation stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
What, you have some cool events that come up, and you posted one in Canyon Lake. Nobody probably took advantage of it, but shoot, that was such a rad event. We talked about it. It was like, hey, they're having this boat day. They're having, this is also therapeutic effect.
Yes.
But it's really cool stuff. Talk a little bit about why it's so important to be involved in some of these things.
Yeah. So where I live in Canyon Lake, we have lots of different events and groups and organizations. Like you were saying, the one that I had sent you particularly that I thought would be good was a Learn to Ride Day by the Canyon Lake Wakeboard Club. And you go and you pay your $35 and you get to go on a boat. And they had, it used to be California Skier, but it's now Pacific Marine. And they come out with all the gear. So all the boards, all the bindings, all the life jackets, and your size, it doesn't matter. You just show up with a towel and pay your fee, and you get to go on a boat and learn to wakeboard or wake surf or wake skate or whatever it is that you want to do. So myself, my daughter went that day and learned. She's 8 years old, and that was her first day to get on a board. We do participating in different golf events here in Canyon Lake as well, or different movie nights and golf cart parades and things that are always happening here. So I always try to let you know if there's something fun that I think that people would enjoy doing, just to, even if it's to get out of the house for a day and get outside of your mind. Those kinds of things are what you need, right? Who knows, you might make some new friends.
Exactly. And thanks, Anela, for being like that, such a great resource and just personable thing for Warrior Built and the PTSD Foundation Southern California chapter. I mean, these people like you are super important to obviously the mission of helping these guys in so many different aspects. But if there's some other things that you want to talk about, feel free to throw it out there. And then, hold up, we'll come back to that. But I got to do this PSA deal that I do every time. The VA selected my podcast a long time ago to kind of throw these PSAs out. So we'll come right back and we'll talk about some other stuff. If Brian's around to throw it up there.
He's in the back.
All right. Yeah. Well, he's not there, so we'll see if he throws it out another time. But if there's anything else you want to throw out there, feel free to do it. And if somebody wants to get a hold of Anela, they can do it through me. If you're on the Warrior Group Network, you can also throw some messages up there. Anything else you want to add?
I think the biggest takeaway that I want everyone to have is that no matter what the issue is, no matter if you're looking at yourself going, well, I have all my fingers and toes, I don't have the right to be upset, or I don't have the right to have PTSD. It doesn't matter what your physical appearance is. It can affect people differently. And it might not have affected you immediately when the incident happened, or incidents, right? But as you go into your future, it might change based on people that you meet or situations that you're in. And I don't want anyone to suffer in silence. So even if I can't personally help you, then I want to find someone that can. If you need more therapies, then I can give you in my office. Then I reach out to you, Chief, and try to get them to either Camp Hope, or I reach out to Phil Rogers that we both know here in Southern California. And he has a network of places all across the country that he could put people in as well. So I just really want people to not suffer in silence. And I don't want you to think that your issues are not as important as other people's issues. Like, oh, I don't need that, right?
Yeah, there's always, and this is something I talk about a lot. There's always somebody that's like, hey, I don't deserve that because I'm not missing a leg. I'm not I'm not I'm not in a wheelchair. And so you stack yourself in this boat, and until you're like, paralyzed and you can't do anything, you wouldn't ask for any help. Don't do that. You know,
Yeah.
help comes from a lot of things. And I stopped using the word help for the most part because I now use camaraderie. That's why
Mhm.
people come to Warrior Built. They come there to get that saturated brotherhood networking.
Yeah.
Just by talking to you, maybe you don't feel like you need help, but you just want someone to talk to for a minute.
Mhm.
At least give Anela or myself a chance to kind of see where you're at, and throw you into a place where you're really gonna thrive. You know, a lot of times people are just so, and combat vets are the worst, man. They're just like, I did so many crazy things. I don't deserve to be there. I don't deserve this. Well, there's a whole bunch of people saying the same thing, and
Yeah.
there's a great event at Canyon Lake where guys could go get on this boat, but everybody's like, oh, that's not for me. And guess what? The boat's empty because
Yeah.
someone's saying, I'm not going to get in that seat. Get in that seat. I'd rather pull you out of it because someone
Well,
else might need it
it's
more
for
than you.
everybody, right? It's not asking for you to list all of the things that you think are limiting you. It's just open, right? And that's one of the good things about Warrior Belt too, is that all of your guys's activities and events are just open. Show up. We don't care what you look like. We don't care what ability or disability you have. We just want you to be here. And I think that that is something really difficult for people to wrap their heads around in terms of mental health, right? Because they're used to being a provider of something in the military or a provider of something in their corporate job or in a relationship or in whatever aspect that you want to look at it. And then if they're feeling like they're not any good anymore, then it makes it really hard to want to go to these open events where, people are just going to talk to you like a normal human being when you don't feel like you're normal.
Exactly. Great stuff. And Anela, feel free to put out any information that you want. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, where they can do it. It's in the show notes. I've also in the show notes included a link directly to your website.
Okay,
So,
perfect. So at the bottom of our website, when you go to the main page, there is an intake form. If anybody wants to go ahead and try to become a patient in my office, if they want to specifically see me, then they can. The wonderful thing about my office as well is that most of the providers that I have working underneath me are also military affiliated. So we have a prior Army veteran, we have a prior sheriff's deputy. We have, all different kinds of things that would relate to first responder and military physical and mental health. So, but they can go in and fill out that intake form or send an email to my office manager and say, hey, I have a question for Anela or whatever it is, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
And what is your email address? Or not email, but what's your website?
It's amindfulyu.com. So amindfulyu.com.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add?
I think I'm good. Otherwise, everyone, I wish that they just believe in yourself and believe in the reason that you are still here and just reach out. Help isn't being weak, it's actually being stronger because it takes more strength to be able to admit that you need something.
Awesome. Anela, thanks a lot for being on the show. This is much appreciated. It's a great resource that you are.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Combat Vet Vision. This is a chance where, if you're dealing with something, there's people here that have a lot to relate to and support you in whatever endeavors that you're trying to accomplish. There's a lot of other support, whether you're trying to do whatever in life that you might have questions about. Hey, my show's normally focuses on Warrior Built, the PTSD Foundation, but there's a lot of organizations out there doing some incredible things. I bring those organizations under the fold to kind of talk about their issues and what they're doing, what they're able to provide, what what they're knocking out, because there are some amazing things going on in this world, and then there's some things that are not. So stay on top of yourself, be good to yourself, be good to others, reach out, and be involved. Camaraderie is a form of help through saturation. Until next time, hey, this is Aaron Sievert. Strength and honor. Out.